What's up, everybody? Tom Pelissero here with Judd Zolgad after the Vikings' 36-17 loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Judd, I picked the Vikings to lose this game because if you look at some of the matchups, the things that the Buccaneers did well and the things that they've done throughout the season, playing a bunch of close games to this point, just seemed to match up pretty well with what the Vikings were doing. They were a team coming in here at 2-4. They needed to win this game if they were going to be relevant in the second half. And I think what you saw, as much as everybody I talked to in the Vikings locker room said we were emotionally ready to play the game, was for whatever reason, the Buccaneers had that edge early in the game. They got some things rolling downhill, and when the Vikings offense gets behind, they're simply not built to really make up that deficit in a hurry.
There were a lot of problems with this game. Credit Tampa Bay for coming in here and playing a pretty good game. Not a great game. This was another ugly National Football League game. But what's going on with the Vikings? I mean, let's start off with the passing game is a mess right now. Christian Ponder can say whatever he wants about having to improve, but there's no confidence there right now. Defensively, the Vikings are going to try and tell you we played another tough, small running back, but they can't tackle right now.
Yeah.
All the things that were going so right for a while and were a bit masked last Sunday in the victory over Arizona came out today and were pimples on this team because there were problems all over the place, and what the Vikings need to do is they need to look internally. They don't need to look at what Tampa Bay did to them. They need to look at what they can't do right now.
No, and here's the thing, too. They did catch a lot of breaks so far. We had one significant injury, Chris Cook breaking a wrist. This is what we've talked about,
big deal.
Testing that secondary that last year depth was such a concern for him. What would happen the first time the Vikings lost? Not just to Mistral Raymond or Aaron Henderson for a couple of games, but somebody who's really irreplaceable. I would consider Chris Cook in that category. Now all of a sudden Josh Robinson moves into the starting job. A.J. Jefferson moves into the nickel. You've got a different combination of guys now. You're still going to have Antoine Winfield playing the slot, but all of a sudden you got two young guys playing on the outside who are not as physically talented, I don't think, as Chris Cook is. We'll see how they're able to bounce back from that. We'll also see how they're able to bounce back from this sort of a performance where so many different things went wrong. Look at the other things that happened in this game. Who the hell did they play? Tampa Bay.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
They muff a punt, boy.
The 2-4 Buccaneers.
It has been a long week. They muff a punt early on. What happens? Roscoe Parrish falls on his own fumble.
Right.
The Vikings have two fumbles. Buccaneers recover both of those. Those are the plays within the course of a game that are always going to tilt things. Everything, all the bounces went against the Vikings, including the injury thing.
I'm not buying, though, and I know players said that they were emotionally prepared to play this game. I'm not buying it. I don't think we saw it. I think we saw a team that was lucky to beat Arizona last Sunday, had a lot of faults, and tonight, for whatever reason, didn't come out and didn't look prepared. This is really the first time in quite a while. I mean, the Indianapolis game I had questions about, but that was week 2. That's when we really didn't know what this team was about. This was the first game because Washington was a bit of an odd game. And in Washington, you face Robert Griffin III. He's a really unique talent, unique quarterback. This was the first game where you really said to yourself, all right, the Vikings have a chance to prove something here. It's a nationally televised game. It's a Thursday night game. There was absolutely no reason not to come out pretty jacked up for this game, and I don't think they did it. I would disagree with the players in the locker room who said that they were prepared to play this game. In many ways, they weren't.
You know, Jared Allen talked about it too, though, that maybe had guys looking at it and reading everything about all the Thursday night the home teams have won. These guys got to have a long flight. We got a 10-day stretch ahead here. We're going to have a 3-day weekend. What am I doing? He thought there were some guys who got distracted, and you can't do that. So now,
but that's not being prepared. I mean, that's
and Leslie Frazier took the responsibility on himself too, saying I didn't get my guys prepared to play this game. Whatever it was, and whoever you believe, you've seen some significant issues that they have, but they've always been there. That's the thing. They've been able to mask their issues. They came out and played lights out against San Francisco. Even the following week against Detroit, the offense didn't win that game. They scored on special teams, and that's what turned that game in Detroit.
And defense played well.
Right. The offense, once been put in a position where they have to come back, and I'm not counting what happens in the fourth quarter. You can say whatever you want about how they moved the ball against Washington late in that game, or even how they moved the ball in stretches today.
Yeah.
It's different when a team drops back in a prevent defense and you're throwing all those underneath routes. You've got to be able to make plays down the field in order, and not just like not go balls, not 50-yard completions, but you've at least got to be able to do damage in the intermediate passing game just to make teams respect what you're doing.
Right now.
They were playing their safeties 11 yards off the line of scrimmage when they were in too deep coverage, and a lot of times, even when they had a 20-point lead or whatever it was, I turned to you, I said, look, they still got a man down in the box. There's no respect whatsoever for the Vikings to beat you over the top, and now they've got to be able to figure out, do we have the guys internally who are going to be able to turn this around, or can we tweak the things that we're already doing? There's issues everywhere. There's issues with the court. It's not just Christian Ponder, which is what people are going to reduce it to, but there's issues with the protection schemes, with the blitz pickup, with those shifts that Tampa Bay was doing, and there's certainly things with the route concepts and everything else where guys are not getting open.
Your problem, too, is this. You can call this offense whatever you want, okay? but for fans that watched the Vikings for a while, this is 2007 all over again. Play calling, there's issues. There's issues in how to call
To an extent.
There's issues in play calling. There's issues in protection. There's issues in route running. And you know what tonight was? By the third quarter, I told somebody, I said, this is a Tavares Jackson start. I said, you're right back to where you were, which is the home fans are getting upset. Ponder looks completely lost. He's taking off and running because he doesn't know what else to do. Jerome Simpson, they threw, 5 deep balls, I think. 4 or 5 deep balls to Jerome Simpson. Once again, one of them was out of bounds tonight.
Yeah.
You've just
But there's no separation there either. With
No, I
Simpson.
realize that, but I'm saying
Even when he's making plays, he's got guys in his hip pocket.
Offensively, you're back to a lot of the issues that this Vikings team has had on and off for years now. Defensively, I think it comes down to, aside from Chris Cook being hurt, which is a big deal,
Yeah.
it comes down to tackling. I mean, the fundamental lack of tackling, don't give me this crap about we're facing good small running backs. That is hogwash. Yeah, these guys are okay. That's fine. That's fantastic. This is tackling. Harrison Smith, who I really like. Harrison Smith, I'm a big Harrison Smith fan. I think Harrison Smith's going to be a heck of a player. Harrison Smith has to learn how to tackle. And you don't tackle by putting your shoulder into a guy. You tackle by wrapping him up. They are not wrapping people up. It's contagious, too.
And sometimes, again, when we're talking about the breaks that they've gotten before they didn't get tonight, what happens on that screen pass? They're in quarters. So you've got nobody who can explode on that play from the start. You've got to be able to be in your zone. All of a sudden, they block that play up really well. Chad Greenway's engaged with a blocker. Harrison Smith gets blocked off on the play. You didn't have anybody who missed a clean shot at the guy, and it ends up being a 64-yard touchdown. Those are the things where you're going to get caught in certain calls. They mixed it up a lot more tonight than they did last week, where they basically sat back and covered 2 all day. They did try to do some different things against Tampa Bay. Christian Ponder can learn a lot from Josh Freeman in terms of, do you ever see Josh Freeman not having his shoulders square and stepping directly up in the pocket? He's never moving sideways. Right. It's always step up, step up, step up. And they did a good job steering the Vikings blockers wide, or excuse me, steering the Vikings pass rushers wide. The Vikings didn't send a whole lot of pressure when they did. Touchdown against Josh Robinson down here, too.
And Josh Freeman's a guy, too, who last year took a step back, and I think now is progressing once again.
They're young quarterbacks. You're going to go up and down.
That's the thing with Ponder. In fairness to Ponder, as bad as it looks right now, he is 18 starts in. He is 18 starts into his career. So making any definitive, well, this isn't going to work now, any statements like that is ridiculous. The Vikings aren't going to do that. Christian Ponder is not going to lose the job this year unless he gets hurt. It's not going to happen. So your hope is that he's going to learn on the job. But offensively, this team right now has a lot of issues. Ponder is one of them, but it goes well beyond Christian Ponder. And the other discussion that we're going to eventually have to have, and you brought this up, Jerome Simpson and separation. Jerome Simpson signed a 1-year contract. I'm still not convinced that back is okay, and he might simply not be the guy. But he simply might not be the guy. When this team does eventually really turn the corner, because, see, this year's going to be all about you turn the corner and then you go backwards a little bit. You turn the corner and then you go backwards. When this organization really does turn the corner, Jerome Simpson simply might not be the vertical threat that we're going to be watching.
He's dealing with some sort of disc issue in his back. He still has numbness in his foot, and from everything I've heard, we're only allowed to see warm-ups basically at practice. From what I've heard, he's dropping out during practice. He is having significant issues.
So
but
why would he want to play, Tom? Why on earth would Jerome Simpson?
He wants to play because he wants to get paid, but the Vikings want him to play too because he's still, even Jerome Simpson at 97% or whatever he is right now, is better than anyone else they have. There's no one else who even has the chance to make a play downfield. You can still see it. He went up and he high-pointed that football on the sideline for a 30-odd yard gain today. He still can make those plays, but when we're talking about a vertical speed threat receiver, he's not getting that big-time separation.
Separation-wise, he is this much better than Michael Jenkins right now.
No, he's
much better right now.
He's better. He's
right now.
More
healthy,
better.
I think he's way better. I'm telling you.
I think you've spent too much time here.
Do you think he's consistently getting separation?
No, he's not at all.
That's my point. Michael Jenkins doesn't.
But he has a prayer to at least run with the defensive back, whereas the defensive backs against Michael Jenkins run right by.
But what I'm saying is they simply don't have that guy. It's not happening for them right now.
They've got to be able to figure out how do you use the players that you do have. I mean, you can throw the ball to Percy Harvin in the flat all you want, but if they're going to be up on the line of scrimmage and pressing you, those bubble screens are going to be a little bit less effective.
So real quick before we get done here, where's Jarius Wright these days?
God, you're such a jerk. He's Judd. I'm Tom. Full Vikings coverage as always.
You the fan.
1500 ESPN.com.
Free Jarius.